Why are Indian managers and bosses disliked abroad? Walk into an American, Canadian, British, or Australian office, and you may find an Indian professional everywhere, from software engineers to consultants to CEO and senior executives. Indian origin professionals have become a major part of the global workforce. Yet, alongside that success, an uncomfortable workplace stereotype has also emerged that some Indian managers are difficult bosses. Imagine walking into an American office, and before you even say a word, your nationality has already shaped the opinion and the way people think of your leadership. But why? Is it because Indian managers are genuinely more controlling? Is it because they bring workplace habits from India into countries which have a very different work culture? Or it is the stereotype itself becoming a form of discrimination? The reality is far more complicated. One of the biggest sources of the friction is the hierarchy. In many Indian workplaces, seniority carries significant weight. Employees may be expected to respect the boss, avoid openly challenging the decisions, and follow instructions from the top. In many Western workplaces, particularly in the United States, managers are often expected to create a more collaborative environment where employees can question their decisions, disagree with their bosses, and openly negotiate with the priorities. When these office cultures collide, before that one-sided professionals can look into completely different on the other side. An Indian manager may believe that closely monitoring an employee demonstrates responsibility. An American employee may interpret the same behavior as micromanagement. A manager may believe that asking someone to stay late shows commitment to the team, but the employees may see it as an unacceptable intrusion of the personal space. And that brings us to another major complaint: the availability. Some workers have accused Indian managers and bosses of creating an always-on culture, expecting the employees to answer the messages outside the working hours, attend late meetings, or even remain available during the weekends. And this does not mean that Indian managers universally behave the same way, nor the long hours culture is uniquely to the Indians. But this is a point that is getting highlighted. The difference is often an exception. In parts of the Indian corporate world, working beyond the official hours can sometimes be treated as evidence of dedication. But in many Western countries, employees are often likely to draw a clear line between the professional responsibilities and the personal life. So when those expectations meet, they collide. Resentment can develop very quickly. But perhaps the most complicated factor is not this. It can be the H-1B system. Surprised to know that? But keep watching. H-1B is a major factor. For thousands of Indian professionals in the United States, immigration status can affect the entire professional life. Losing a job can mean losing a stability in the immigration situation and having to find another employer with the limited 60-day grace period. And that creates an enormous power imbalance. Imagine an employee who believes that the manager is unfair but is afraid to confronting the manager that could damage their career. Saying no to excessive demands becomes much more harder in the immigration future when it is tied to employment. And that's not the only thing. This creates two different experiences inside the same office. A permanent resident or a US citizen may feel comfortable challenging the manager. An employee dependent on the employer, the sponsor, it may feel that it may have fewer more options. Research involving Indians and the US tech workforces have highlighted the difference in control, especially over the working time along the temporary visa workers. And that makes the H-1B system important in understanding of the workforce power, not proof that Indian managers are inherently abusive, but another side of this. Then there comes the communication. Indian English can sometimes be more indirect, formal, or hierarchical than the American workforce communication. Expressions, tones, instructions, and feedback can be interpreted very differently according to the cultures. A manager who believes that they are being direct may be perceived as rude. A manager attempting to be polite may sound evasive. And an employee accustomed to openly challenging their boss may be reviewed as a more hierarchical manager as disrespectful. And these small changes and differences can accumulate as a major workforce tension. That's not all. There's another accusation that repeatedly appearance of the discussions about Indian managers. And that complaint is that they prefer hiring Indians. There is particularly a very sensitive issue that Indians hire Indians. Some employees claim that Indian managers favor the candidates from their own networks or the communities. But it is important not to turn an anecdotal experience into a claim about Indian managers as a whole. Networking and referrals exist across every nationality and industry. The problem begins when a legitimate concern about the workplace favoritism becomes blanket assumptions. A blanket that includes Indian bosses equals to Indian hiring. And that stereotype can itself become discriminatory. And this is where the story becomes bigger than a workplace culture. Indian managers working abroad can face prejudice precisely because of their nationality. An Indian manager may walk into the American workforce, the office, and specially carrying assumptions about being hierarchical, controlling, or maybe biased towards the Indians, even before the management style is actually evaluated, and that creates a cycle of viciousness. Some employees may interpret ordinary management styles and decisions through the existing stereotype. Managers may then become very defensive. Employees may become frustrated, and that stereotype gets enforced. So, are Indian bosses actually worse? Well, there's no evidence that nationality determines whether someone will be a good manager or a bad one. A bad boss can be Indian, American, British, Canadian, and Australian. But the real issue is what happens when different workplace cultures, communication styles, and power structures collide. Indian professionals moving to management abroad may need to adapt a little bit to the expectations around the economic autonomy, work-life, boundaries, feedback, and quality between the managers and the staff. And at the same time, Western workplaces need to recognize that the cultural differences are not automatically evidence of the incompetence of a bad intention. Rather, an employer needs to distinguish between the genuine workplace misconduct and discomfort caused simply by the unfair cultural behavior. Well, ultimately, in the end, the debate over the Indian managers is not really about Indians. It is about globalizations. Millions of people are now working across the borders, carrying different ideas about the authority, ambition, loyalty, communication, and success into the same office.